Financial Modeling, Topic 5, Section 5, the use of if statements or conditional statements. In the last program that we did in Section 4, we calculated the present value of n number of cash flows, where we set n equal to 5 for our example. In that example, the first payment is received 1 year from today. In other words, that first $100 payment from that last example was received 1 year from now, and the present value turned out to be about $90 of that first payment. However, what if that first payment starts today? So I receive $100 today, and then for the next 4 years after that for a total of 5 payments. Well, in that case, that's a beginning of year payment present value. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an if-then statement to take our p-value program from the last section and to make it more flexible to allow the user to specify beginning or end of year payments. So the basic syntax for if-then statements is they could be on one line, but generally I never use that because usually I'm using many different else-if statements. So this is what I'm generally going to do. I'm going to say if some condition, then. Now be careful in VBA, you have to be very careful. The statements that happen if this is true have to be on the next line of code. They cannot be up there. And then if you have additional else-if statements, you list them else if, some condition, then, next line else-if statement. Then you finish with an else and then an end if. So let's do an example. It's a lot easier to see the example, but remember to keep this if you're trying to build a program that does if then else, or use VBA's help function to tell you the syntax for a multi-line if then else if statement. So I'm going to take my p-value program and I'm going to call this one p-value 2. So p-value 2 is going to have 4 parameters. The payment, we're going to keep $100. N, we're going to keep that 5. R, we're going to keep that 10%. And then I'm going to have another variable. I'm going to call it end or begin. And that end or begin is going to be, and the user is going to enter either an E or a B. And here I have it entered using an E or a B. And if the user does end of year payments, in other words, the user puts an E in when they insert this function, this is the exact same code as the original p-value function. For I equal 1 to n, next I, and then p-value equals p-value plus the present value of the cash flow discounted at I, period. However, I'm going to put another line of code. So if end or begin equals E, then execute this statement. In other words, if that condition is true, execute these lines of code. And then, if that is true, it's going to then skip straight to end if. However, what if the user puts in a B? The user enters a B. It's going to say if end or begin equals E. That's not true. Then it's going to go to this line of code. Else end or begin equals B. Okay, that is true. If the user puts in a B, it's then going to execute these lines of code before the else statement. And these lines of code say for I equal 1 to n, next I. Now this looks almost identical to the previous program except for this. I to the I minus 1 power. And this is a little trick that I often use in finance to skip the first discounting period when calculating the present value. So think about what's going to happen here. It's going to set I equal to 1 and take the present value of the first cash flow. P-value 2 equals P-value 2 plus 100 over 1.1 to the 1 minus 1 power. Now that's 0. Anything to the 0 power equals 1. So it's going to take $100 as the present value of the first payment. And that's going to be good because the present value of a beginning year payment of $100 received today is $100. So the present value of the first payment received today is 100. Then it's going to set I equal to 2. Next I. P-value equals P-value plus payment over 1 plus R to the 2 minus 1 power, meaning that next payment, that second payment, is actually received only 1 year from now, and the present value is going to be $90. So this is going to execute these statements 5 times. The trick is it's going to discount the first payment actually it's not going to discount it at all. It's only going to discount the second payment, which received 1 year from now for 1 period. Then it's going to discount the third payment for 2 periods, and so on. So the present value of a 5-year annuity, discounted at 10% for 5 years, if this payment starts today, is $416. Now, notice I have one little piece of code, additional piece of code here. And this is only in here to allow the user, or to anticipate if the user messes up. In other words, what if the user does not put an E or a B? Say they put an X. For some reason, an X, or even the word end, not an E, but the word end, as the variable here. So think about the user entering the word end in here. Well, think about how this program would work if the user entered the word end. Well, would it say, is it E? No. Is it B? No. Oh, it's going to use else statement. Else, it's simply going to return this back to the user. Input E or B. Now think about how valuable it is to have this last else if statement. What if the user did put in the end statement, but I replaced this with an else? Just an else statement, and got rid of this. If the user type in the word end and not the letter E, it would say this is not true, so I'll just do it the second way. So it is good programming practice to always have an additional else statement to ensure that the user put in either the first or second, in this case, parameter that you're looking for. If they didn't, I will put in an extra statement that says input E or B. So let's go to our program. This program is called p-value2. I'm going to go to Excel, and I'm going to insert p-value2 here. User defined. I'm going to start typing p-value. I'll find p-value2, which is in my module. I'll put in my payment, my N, my R, and there's my E. Hit OK. There's the 379. I'll copy that program right here, and here it's using B. Now notice if I type in the word end, I get a statement here, input E or B. And that's where I'd say, oh, I must have made a mistake. I will put in E. Let's try one thing. Let's see if lowercase matters for VBA. What if I put a small case E and a small case B? Oh, that's okay. Oh, no, it is not a code. It's not accepting it. So it looks like I have to be case specific in this situation. When doing some kind of equality in my if-then statement, it looks like I need to have the correct value. Let's test that one more time. E, lowercase b. I'm getting an error, so I'm going to enter in uppercase E and uppercase B, and there I have it. So in this program, we talked about using if statements. In other words, conditional statements to add a lot more functional use for your VBA programs.